Welcome to the Putback on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley here with my buddy Chris Williamson. Chris, what do we have for the baseline this week?
Well, Ian, we're going to start really pouring heavily into the draft as it's less than a month away. And there's been a lot of talk about the Knicks who have that number 8 pick, whether they should trade up or whether they should trade down. So, Ian, what's the latest on that front?
Yeah, earlier this month, some teams have been talking to people around top prospects and telling them that they believe that the Knicks were going to make a run at one of the top 2 picks via trade. Now, the Knicks, obviously with several weeks to go, I'm sure they're checking into all different scenarios, all different possibilities, whether it be to stay at 8 or to move back. But when you talk about moving up, you know, the obvious name that comes up is LaMelo Ball. And LaMelo told Jalen and Jacoby last week that at that point, he had only talked to the Knicks and the Warriors on one of these Zoom interviews. It tells you a little bit about where he and his group maybe see him fit or where they want him to be having discussions pre-draft. Now, he could talk to other teams as we get closer to the draft, but I thought that was a little bit noteworthy when you talk about LaMelo and the Knicks.
With that being said, what do you think it would take for the Knicks to move up in the draft?
So, Chris, teams were saying last week that the price was high, and I'm sure it's going to be high until we get closer to the draft because teams are going to try to use that as leverage on any trade scenario. But with the Knicks, I would think that you would have to give up either an R.J. Barrett or a Mitchell Robinson in a deal to move up to the top 2 in addition to, you know, future picks. So that's a hefty price. You know, you have to love the player that you're going to get in one of those 2 spots to make that deal. I don't know exactly where the Knicks are on LaMelo Ball. I know there are people over there that like him. They held him in high regard a few months ago, but still, that's a significant price. You're talking about Barrett or Robinson and other assets to move up. That's a lot to move off of your roster if you're Leon Rosenfeld.
Ian's guest this week is diehard Knicks fan Kazeem Famuyide, host of the Say Less with Kaz podcast. Also, you may recognize him from this.
You know, I'm feeling hopeful. I feel like the Knicks are finally making smart decisions. We beat Porzingis twice. You know, those are the type of wins that could turn out an entire season. So we're going to be all right. We'll be all right.
Drive to the basket. Why are you taking these long two? It's the worst shot in basketball. God! Ah!
What type of sanity is your Knicks fandom at right now?
I think we're at the bargaining stage again. I'm bargaining with myself. Like the last time people said it was a bad draft, Giannis Antetokounmpo was in it, Rudy Gobert was in it. You know what I mean? You got MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year. You just never know, Knicks fans. But we just got to hit on one. You got 3 chances. Just hit on one. Just hit on one. It will be all right.
You talked to LeVar Ball for a long time on your great podcast. Based on that conversation with LeVar, how do you think LaMelo would fit in New York? Not from a basketball standpoint, just from off the court and everything that comes with playing in Manhattan.
LeVar made no bones about it. He wants LaMelo in New York City. He does not want him playing for the Golden State Warriors. If there's any player more well-equipped to take on the bright lights of New York City, the pressure of New York City, he's already far and away the most popular player in this draft. He's already one of the most popular players in basketball. Like, not even, and he hasn't even stepped foot on an NBA court. So anybody who's saying like, oh my God, he can't take, you know, New York City, it's gonna ruin him. It's like, you can't get more popular than this kid. I don't think the lights will get that much brighter. God forgive me for forgetting who quoted it, but he's like, he's a Kardashian with talent. Like, the bright lights will not face him.
You know, you mentioned LeVar, he said it on your podcast that he thought LaMelo would be perfect for the Knicks, and he's not the only one in LaMelo's circle who would like to see him land in New York. But I don't, you know, they can't pull an Eli Manning, force the teams ahead of the Knicks to pass on LaMelo and get him to New York. And so there's not really an avenue to get LaMelo to New York outside of a trade.
I found it interesting that he was very against the idea of LaMelo going to Golden State.
I don't think he wants to see LaMelo come off the bench for anybody. He wants to throw him right in there, right in the fire. He wants his kid to go to a team where he knows he's going to be the man. He's going to have the ball in his hands. As good as LaMelo is and as good of a fit he might be for that Golden State Warriors team, the ball's not going to be in his hand if he's in Golden State. That's going to be in Steph Curry's hands a lot. LaMelo's a guy who needs the ball. He's a creative guy. He's an offensive wizard when it comes to passing and setting up other teammates.
There's a thought among other teams that Golden State doesn't really have the appetite to bring on a rookie, to pay that rookie for 4 years, groom that rookie, when they're on this path to trying to get back to a championship. They see much more value in trying to get a veteran with a trade of that pick than drafting a kid who's 19, 20 years old and waiting for him to mature.
He checks off all the boxes of what you want as a New York Knick, right? He's a point guard. He's flashy. He loves the spotlight. He craves the attention. He's Showtime. There is no better prospect, better suited for Madison Square Garden than this kid. And after talking with his father as long as he did, he convinced me that he was ready for the Garden. And in his words, New York deserves something nice.
Khalid Green is a former Nets scout, and he is the co-host of the Up Next podcast on Apple Podcasts.
From an old school perspective, I'm 47 years old, so he has a little Penny Hardaway in him. Penny had a little flash. Penny was exceptional with the ball and can do a lot at that size. So I'm gonna go to Penny Hardaway.
If you're dating yourself, I've just been dated too, because Penny and Shaq, they were my guys when I was younger watching the game. So yeah, old man status here for sure.
He's somebody that I think can be a core guy, 6'7" point guard. His instincts are NBA instincts right now. You can't teach that type of size as a point guard. And he's a real point guard. Like, he's not somebody that they're trying to make a point guard. He has a natural feel for the position. And I do believe he can be an all-star, maybe a perennial all-star.
Auburn's Isaac Okoro might not be available at 8, but that hasn't stopped the Knicks from doing their homework on the forward, according to his former head coach, Bruce Pearl.
They've talked to strength coaches, trainers, assistant coaches. They liked Isaac from the jump.
Okoro may not fill that point guard void that the Knicks have, but the 6'6", 19-year-old definitely fits Tom Thibodeau's defense-first approach.
He's the best defensive player in the draft. He can guard 1 through 5. Look, everybody works hard, but nobody works hard every day, except he does. He just works hard every day.
Okoro averaged almost 13 points per game as a freshman, but he'll need to improve his perimeter shooting to succeed on offense at the next level.
Look, he was such a dominating downhill player for the first 18 years of his life, right? He didn't need to shoot it. We forced it, and I thought he did well. Now the question is, you got to do better than doing well to be a great pro, and that's what happens when you take a kid that's 19 years old.
Cast, everybody who knows you knows you're a big WWE guy. You used to work for them. So we're going to throw out some current and past Knicks players and get their best rest of their comps. So I'm going to start with our boy, Mitchell Robinson.
I'll compare him to Big Daddy Cool Diesel, background player. He was the bodyguard for the Heartbreaker Shawn Michaels. And then now he's starting to become his own man, 7 feet tall, big, cool guy, never gets too excited, too cool for school.
Kaz, what about Brooklyn's own Taj Gibson?
He's a big, strong guy, you know what I mean? He's kind of an enforcer. I give him all Arn Anderson, you know what I mean? Of the Four Horsemen. Ric Flair got all the flash and the lights, but there was somebody over there doing the dirty work, just like Taj Gibson.
What about a guy like Bobby Portis?
Crazy Eyes. I'll give him Psycho Sid Vicious, psycho music and look all nuts. And then once the eyes got wide, it's like, oh, okay, he means business now.
This guy is one of the most polarizing players on Knicks Twitter, at least from what I've seen. Frank Ntilikina. So no matter what you say, you're going to anger one group or the other. So go ahead, Cass.
He's kind of like the Dolph Ziggler. There's people who love him for everything he does. There's people that can't stand him. There's also that weird sort of middle ground where it's nice to just kind of be a guy in the NBA. It's nice to kind of be a guy who just lasts for 10, 12 years. And that's kind of what Dolph Ziggler's been.
RJ Barrett, who do you compare him to?
I'll go with Cody Rhodes, like he's a guy who was kind of overshadowed. It's kind of like RJ Barrett was overshadowed by Zion Williamson and being in Duke and all these other stuff. And now that we're seeing what he can do on his own, and I think we're going to start seeing what RJ Barrett can do on his own. He's like the unquestioned leader of the team, how great he can be. So I think RJ and Cody have a lot of similarities.
Cass, thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe SNY on YouTube for all your Putback and Knicks content. For Chris, I'm Ian. We'll see you next week.